Cognition is everything. Without our brains, we are just a piece of meat. We want to highlight and make accessible the impact of cognition in everyday life. Welcome to the Cognitive Tribe.
Today, the theme is brains under stress. We will look at different aspects of a brain under stress, what happens when we are stressed, and how we can handle it.
So, welcome to the Cognitive Tribe, John Axelsson.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to have you here. So, before diving into this exciting theme of how the brain works and then in connection to stress, we want to know a little bit more about who you are, both as a person and as a professional. So, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself? I understand you're a man and that you're Swedish, maybe middle age, and that you live in Stockholm. Is that correct?
That's perfectly correct.
Is that enough? Or how would you describe yourself as an individual, as a private person?
As a private person, I'm quite a social person. I'm today a sleep researcher, primarily at the Stress Research Institute. So I'm working a lot on what sleep is and does to us and how it helps us to recover from stress. So I'm focusing a lot basically on how we perform when we're not at top, basically. So we compare people when they are in their optimal position versus when they're sleep deprived or when they're stressed. So I have a position at the Stress Research Institute since 2017, the last 5 years. But I've always been a curious person that wants to do many things. So in the field of sleep, which actually taps into many other research fields, that has allowed me to do this. So as a curious person with the background in trying to learn more about human biology, sleep research has been a perfect way to study and develop, because I can actually look into how sleep relates to the brain functions, how it affects the immune system, how it affects the metabolic system, how it affects our behavior, and how it relates to how we function in social situations. I've always been a person that probably get a little bit bored of diving into the same hole all the time. So and sleep allows me to then educate myself and get a better understanding of a broad number of different aspects. So if you want to know who I am as a person, I think I'm a curious person that probably gets a little bit bored easily. And I'm in a field, and as a researcher, you have a lot of freedom, which is a fantastic job, basically, because I can, to a large degree, decide what I want to focus on. So yes, that is a little bit of me as a person and why I'm doing what I'm doing, I guess.
I just got curious, John, because I've heard a few pods with you and you've written books and you like variation. Do you ever get fed up with answering all the tips about how to get the best sleep?
Sometimes I get a little bit annoyed, but on the other hand, I'm a social person, so I like to talk to people and I also like to help people. So it's kind of a mixed bag of feelings, but I do like, and then also when you have this discussion, it often starts at some point, but I can also lead it to something which I think is more interesting, and I can also help people. So yes, sometimes I think, oh, this is a little bit boring, but I can actually turn it into something more positive in general, if I have the time. And then I think it's nice to interact with people and help people.
Manipulate, we would call it in other terms.
Well, maybe I think I give people knowledge so they can help people can manipulate themselves. I'm not making them do things. I think giving people knowledge can help people manipulate themselves or develop or do things. So probably help them, nudge them, or probe them to be a little bit more healthier and hopefully a little bit more balanced view on things, and probably stress a little bit less about things.
Did you always want to become a researcher? Was this a plan, a master plan you had?
No,
how did you become a scientist?
I was probably a late developer. I wasn't so mature, I think, when I was a teenager. I started in the building. During my A levels, I studied to become a building engineer, which is the lower level of engineer. And this is basically in the same kind of profession as my dad was. So I probably didn't think much. Mm-hmm. I just did what my dad did, and then we had the crisis in Sweden, 92, 93 in the building industry. And then all of a sudden I had to do something different. And then I just by randomness studied psychology because I thought that was fantastically interesting. So I could actually deep into the field of biology and psychology are fantastic to know more about how organisms work, how humans work, and how we interact with one another. I mean, there's so much to know, and I've been able to spend my entire life in that field.
So cool. And I mean, you are a professor, which is title, the nicest title you can have as a scientist, I guess you can say. And very few scientists or even fewer people become a professor. How is it to be a professor? Or so do you call it an academic professor? Maybe in English, professor means a teacher, but you're a, what do you say in English?
I mean, in English, I mean, professor is actually a teaching job.
Yeah.
So it's actually you're a lecturer in general.
Yeah.
So in most professor positions, traditionally, it's always been the teaching part. But now they've developed the professor, so you can be more of a research professor, or you can be a clinical professor, where you also combine your research with being in the clinical field. So I think professors are now more of a broad spectrum, but it is, to be honest, if you have a school system, we force everyone in the school system, and those who fail to find something more interesting, some of them will be professors in the end. So I mean, you educate yourself, and this is the highest top of education, of the pyramid of education, I would say, in academia. Some of us have failed to find something better to do, and some of us have been lucky to do something that we find is really interesting. But I think I changed. Like, I was in the working industry for a while and then came back. So I'm very happy that I started studying psychology again and could develop to become a researcher. And I would say that we're fantastically fortunate that we have people that can actually work on trying to gain a new knowledge, because I think that is the important aspect, that society is driven by knowledge, and there are lots of different kind of cultural processes that drives our society in ways for profit. But I think in that sense, I hope that knowledge gaining and science, because people are then independent, that is good science, where people can actually work from their own interests, can actually help society develop on the whole. And one of the important aspects of science is that to help people make decisions based on knowledge. I think that is an important aspect. Our job is to provide knowledge. So politicians and journalists and other people who influence other people and make decisions about other people make better choices. So for us, it's provide this knowledge, and then hopefully as many as the politicians actually use this knowledge when they make their decisions. But the problem with, of course, is that emotions and traditions and egos stand in the way for making knowledge-based decisions. But our job is to provide this knowledge, at least.
Having this deep knowledge that you have and your position is a kind of power position. It can be used as that. You as a person strike me as you're not doing this, or you're not striving for power. That's my impression. You're kind of humble, and so how do you is that the correct impression? I mean, you like to share, you're really curious, and you do it because it's kind of a passion. And I mean, if you put this on a general level and look at how people use a power position, how is your reflection around your position in this sense?
I do get a kick out of this, of course, as well, because I am the expert. I am the person with knowledge. And then, but I also, so from a personal level, it's like you can use this for different reasons. But I think I have developed across time to be a more mature person, and I do differently with my power than what I would have done when I was younger, probably. But I think it's important. One of my main aspects is that knowledge is also very limited. So one of our most important messages, and when we talk to people, is to be more balanced about things. It's not so easy that there are easy. Things are black and white. It's a gray scale. And some of my friends, when I always say, "Oh, it depends," it's not. It's rarely yes and no. It's often, "Oh, it depends."
Yeah.
So it's a gray scale, and that is one of the things, is that it's really hard to say certain things. It's like this or like that. It depends in different circumstances and things. So our job is to kind of, like an onion, to open another layer of knowledge and the consequences of certain decisions for politicians and for other people. Okay, it might seem like a logic way, but politicians often come with very simple answers and changes to complex questions or complex phenomena in society, and that is a problem. So we, as a researcher, it's more that we need to be balanced and come with knowledge of, but okay, well, this would be the consequences for this group of people if you do this, for example. So yeah, I think I have a fantastic position. I'm white and I'm male, and I'm always been kind of, as a person, I've never seen this. I've been very lucky in that sense. I mean, it would have been harder for me in another society with another gender. I'm also tall, and there are all of these aspects that have been in the favor for me. So I have to be a little bit, I've been humbled when I understand that I'm actually having a fantastic position. I need to do it. I will need to utilize my power as helpful for other people as possible.
As a professor, you're both an expert, but also a leader. I guess you have a big team of scientists. How is that to balance a position as an expert, but also being a leader of, I guess, primarily other experts? It sounds like it could be challenging.
I can work, of course it's challenging because not everyone fits as leaders, but I think that's an important aspect within science and research, that there are a lot of different positions and you can become a complete expert without having lots of researchers. You can be an expert within another research group. So a research group needs a lot of different expertise. I'm a generalist, I would say. I'm probably a decently good leader. I hope so, without saying too much. But I have many weaknesses, of course, and I'm not an expert within statistics any longer, which I mean, I was educated in that, but you need to collaborate with experts in statistics. I need to collaborate with experts within immunology, and I need to collaborate with experts in psychiatry, because I know about cognition, but I don't know about it in the clinical context as well. So we all collaborate between groups. And we also need, in the research group, you need to have all of these different expertise. Some people are experts in collecting these data that we have today, which I can't do. And some are experts in analyzing EEG data, and some are experts in statistics. So it's a team effort nowadays. While science before, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, it was much easier to be one person to do this science. But today it's much more advanced in many ways, methodologically and statistically. And these tools to do analysis have increased a lot. So you have to be more of a team nowadays, and you have to be able to collaborate. And that has suited me quite well, I would say. So I would probably I would definitely not be a fantastic statistician, because that would bore me probably too much. And maybe it's too complex for my mind as well to be a fantastic statistician. I mean, mathematically, I don't know. I haven't challenged myself. You have to like that thing to become really good at it. So, and I've been able to like being with people and being a little bit in having research groups. So I have a research group, one at Karolinska Institutet and one at the Stress Research Institute at Stockholm University. So together we're about 5-6 employed, and then we have about between 3, 4, and 15 internships and masterships that helps us in a study. So I actually work with people who are quite late in their education. They're often in the master level on their second cycle studies, but some also bachelor students or undergrad students, which is called in America, and then PhD students and postdocs. So I have people on all levels. They're, of course, people with high ambition that studied a lot, they work hard, and they're quite smart in general. So it's very fun to collaborate with other people.
Sounds like a fantastic environment.
Super interesting. I have 2 more questions related more to you and your job. You just released an interesting book, I think. Can you just tell us what is this book about?
This book is called, in Swedish, Sleep Smart, Sömn Smart. And the book is basically a little bit about basic knowledge on sleep, but also why I decided to write the book is people always have lots of questions to me. So I decided maybe I could write the book and then they could get answers to some of these questions in the easy way, rather than asking me the same question. And also I wanted to give people some of these answers, but I also wanted to give them an update of what happened in science, because in the sleep field, science goes very, very rapidly. Lots of very interesting findings happen. So I wanted to get those things out, because otherwise people are they're stuck with what media reports, and media reports certain things, and there are a lot of other aspects that gives a little bit more of a deeper knowledge and a little bit more nuanced picture, so people can get a better knowledge of certain phenomena in society, of does the moon affect our sleep, and how are rhythms important, and how can I support my sleep. So basically going through the science, so people can, one, get some easy tips or ideas of how to do it, but also some more deeper knowledge, so people can choose how much knowledge they want to do. And another aspect of why I want to write the book is that there has been quite a lot of books recently, and then they have worried about sleep a lot and said that, oh, without sleep the brain stops functioning and so on, and that is of course not true. So I wanted to give a little bit more balanced view, because some people, and I think it's a little bit I wouldn't say it's an American way, but I think it's very different from at least Scandinavia, is that they warn about the risks. And that's one way of like, here comes the wolf thing. Oh, you get diabetic if you don't sleep. Your brain stops functioning if you don't sleep. And that worries people. And then, of course, the brain doesn't stop functioning. You get a little bit more tired. And then there are some consequences. And then there are some acute effects and some chronic effects. And we have to think about it. But to be honest, we are all having disturbed sleep from time to time, and don't stress about it. I think it's a bit annoying that people give all, I mean, of course, sleep is important, but it's not like people generally don't die from not sleeping unless they're in an accident. So the acute consequences of sleep is that you get tired, you function a little bit worse, your brain gets a little bit worse for most people. And then there are cases where people have disorders, it's a little more problematic, or if you're a lorry driver and have to drive long distances. But if I fall asleep when I read an article, or when you're a bit tired on a meeting where people fall asleep, it's not the end of the world, to be honest.
Is this book available in English or in Swedish?
It's only in Swedish.
Okay.
It's basically to give a little bit more balanced view of the consequences of sleep loss. And people don't need to be so stressed about their sleep, because sleep is extremely dynamic. And if you're stressed, of course, you will sleep worse for a period. But then the idea is not to have that as a chronic state, and then accept that you have disturbed sleep from time to time, and give some ideas on how you can deal with it and how you can support your sleep. And of course, many of these people talk about how you can optimize your sleep, and the book talks about that as well. But most people don't have any benefits of optimizing sleep. You can treat sleep as a friend. You should be nice to it, and don't be bad to your sleep all the time. But if you sleep a bit worse sometimes and don't treat it, I mean, like you do things that are bad for sleep, like drinking coffee or alcohol, of course that's okay from time to time.
I guess we can have a separate episode just talking about sleep and cognition and so on. It's really interesting.